What do you have for us today?
Go sit down.
You want the microphone?
No, I don't need the microphone.
Larry's
Take it away from him.
Larry's got great interpersonal skills. Don't let him fool you.
I'd say give a hand to Bruce, but don't forget about that. Nice to see everybody. Nice to be here. They call me Larry the Animal Guy. Why, I don't know. But for about 39 years, I've had a pretty cool job. I've been lucky enough to travel all over the country doing wildlife programs. We see about 200 schools each year with our collection of animals. We've lectured for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, organizations like the Audubon Society. We've had animals on television. This will age some of us. Johnny Carson, Merv Griffin, Mike Douglas, the Today Show, Oprah Winfrey. I have a little story about Oprah that I think this audience would enjoy. She's afraid of wild animals. And when we were going to go out, the only animal she thought would be okay to bring on her show was a baboon. Oh. Now, if anyone knows anything about baboons, pound for pound, that just might be the toughest animal we have on this planet. I have one. Well, I've raised several baboons over the years. Is that who you're related to, Bruce?
Yeah.
So anyway, we're going to do the Oprah show, and the reason we were on Oprah is they used to film portions of Wild Kingdom in that same studio in Chicago, and we've worked a lot with Wild Kingdom over the years. And Jim Fowler called me and said, bring up some animals, so we took up the baboon, and they had me in this sound booth. And in front of us, and I was basically in the dark with the baboon, and in front of us was a big window, and that was where the directors and all the producers were putting the show together, because they do 2 or 3 shows a day. So I'm talking to the baboon. Kind of like talking to you, Bruce. But the baboon's a lot smarter. Just fact, that's all I can say. So I'm holding the baboon and I'm talking to, look, I said, there's Oprah. She's a little bitty gal. And so Oprah's getting everybody psyched up to do the show. And she takes a step back and she looks for something, not realizing I was sitting in that booth of that baboon. I saw something that if I'd had a camera would have been worth $1 million. I saw something that many people have never seen. I saw Oprah pick her nose. And she didn't even use a tissue. I thought at that moment, she has millions of dollars and she can't even afford a Kleenex. And everybody asks when I walk out, when I have this goofy grin on my face. And I tell myself, I saw Oprah pick her nose. But besides that, so what we thought we would do today, well, that's a good story, wasn't it? So we're going to kind of pretend we're at school for a little bit, because it seems like whenever they ask me to come and speak, even at a Bigfoot conference, they want me to bring some animals. So I brought a few. So we're going to go to school, and you know, you all love the outdoors, so we have to learn a little bit more about the outdoors, so I brought some things with us. Now, I have something inside of this box that is probably one of the worst reputations, and it simply does not deserve that reputation. Maybe the last time you saw it was a late-night movie. A plane has landed in Mexico. Thousands of these animals have crawled on that plane. It's flown out, landed in a small town in Arizona. And that small town just keeps getting smaller and smaller. We're going to discover today that these stories simply are not true. And what we're talking about is our old friend, the tarantula, right there. Now, I know what many of you are thinking right now. You're thinking, that guy up there with that stupid looking hat on. The lights are on, but nobody's home. Do we have first aid here today, Mr. Ward? I'll bet. Now, what is it, Mountain Dew? he's bitten or stung by that tarantula, well, I have a little secret to share with you. There is not a tarantula that is found in our United States, Central America, South America, Mexico that is dangerous or poisonous to man. That only has enough poison to kill small insects, birds, and mammals, not people. The only people that have ever died from the sting or the bite of a tarantula are movie stars in movies, not real people. Now I want to show you something here. Did you notice I just put new batteries in this one? Right at the top, right up here, the tarantula has two fangs that are about 1/4 inch long that fold right out. Now this tarantula cannot see that well, but with those giant legs it has, it can feel the vibration of the smallest insect, the smallest animal walking along the ground. When it does, it will pounce on its prey, drive those fangs in, and the poison will not only kill its prey, but it will change and transform the insides into liquid. In fact, when a tarantula is thirsty, all they have to do is go up to a cactus, something that has a lot of moisture in it, and that's how they'll quench their thirst. Now I'm holding here, this is a female tarantula. Did you notice how pretty she is? She's going to live to be about 15 or 16 years old. But the male tarantula, he only lives about 2 years. Because when he's about 2 years old, he's going to make his first and his biggest mistake in life. You're way ahead of me. He's going to go out and look for a wife. So he's wandering around the desert. He's going to find this tunnel that goes... Is that working? Is it on now? Oh, cool. Wait a minute. Hold on. He's going to find this burrow, this tunnel that goes underground. Now, all around this burrow, this entrance, is this very fine silky webbing. It has been made by the female tarantula, not to catch food, but it's kind of a no trespassing sign. Well, the male respects this. He does not go into the burrow. But what he's going to do is take those two front legs, these right here, he's going to scratch the entrance, and the female will sense that he's out there. Out she'll come running, and hopefully they will mate. But right after they've mated, the female turns around, attacks and kills her husband. Ladies, that's not fun. Guys, it doesn't get any better. Then she's going to take his poor, pitiful, dying body, carry it clear to the end of the tunnel. Next to it, she's going to lay several hundred eggs. Then in a couple of months, the baby tarantulas will hatch. And when they hatch, guess what their first meal is? Yeah, dear old Dad. You see, there's no such thing as Father's Day in the world of the tarantula. So the next time you're watching a late night movie and they portray the tarantula and the bad guy, the villain, now we know the truth that really the tarantula is not so bad after all. I thought she did a great job. Let's give her a big hand. You know, the fine state of Florida has been inundated with millions of different types of reptiles. Sound like he has gas. But this is one that at one time almost became extinct. Extinct in the state of Florida, but they have come back. And what we're talking, oh, and David, oh, Billy, you can do this. As soon as I grab it and have it captured and under control, grab this container and put it over there, okay? And what we're talking about is the American alligator. Whoa! Let's give him a big hand. This job don't pay him. How many youngsters out there, I see a few, when you grow up would like to become a professional alligator wrestler? Oh, good, your parents are proud. Well, today I'm going to give you a couple of secrets when handling the live alligator. First of all, you have to worry about this end. That's the end with the teeth. Alligators have lots of teeth, but you know an alligator has it made because every time they lose a tooth, another one will grow back. This will happen their entire lifetime. And one interesting thing about the alligator, they have very strong and powerful jaws. But the power comes when they close those jaws. In fact, if this alligator was a little smaller and I could hold him properly, I could hold his mouth shut with just 2 fingers. But closing those jaws is like a car door closing with teeth. His back, well, it's kind of like camouflage because it doesn't take any imagination to realize that this alligator swimming on top of the water kind of looks like a floating log. And the only thing sticking out of the water is his nose so he can breathe, his eyes so he can see, and the top of his back. And when they're swimming, not trying to escape something, they will not make a wave, they will not make a ripple. You'd have no idea that alligator was close by. And if we were in Florida right now, I could tell you where the alligators are at. They're still laying up along the bank, getting ready to go in the water, looking for something to eat. And they may be one of the amazing hunters we know. Because when they're swimming, they have excellent eyesight, they're looking along the bank, and let's pretend on this particular evening, they can see something walking along the edge of the water. What they'll do is they'll cruise up very, very slowly, and they will wait. Alligators are highly intelligent, as smart as any bird. That's why they say do not feed an alligator in Florida. Because once you do, they know instantly, as people will feed them, and if you have no food, you're in big trouble. So as he gets closer, he's waiting. And what he's waiting for is that animal to look the other way. And when it does, he'll let out one big splash of that tail, and he'll take off through that water like a torpedo. Now the animal realizes the danger is in. It will start running away. But you see, the alligator has a little trick. It may have these little bitty short legs, but don't let that fool you, because he can run about 30 miles an hour on land for a short distance. And if he catches his prey, he'll grab it in his jaws, head right back to the water and dive to the bottom. And then he will hold on until that animal drowns. And you know, alligators really cannot chew up their food like we can, but they have a little trick. If they've caught something too big, they'll take it back up on shore, they will dig a hole and bury it. Then in about 2 weeks, I have a feeling it doesn't like me that much. It will go back when that is a little more tender, and that's when they'll enjoy their food. You know, the alligator almost became extinct in the state of Florida, but this animal is absolutely amazing because they are incredible parents. They would lay the eggs and actually guard the nest, and when the babies are ready to hatch, they will tell her. They'll actually make a sound inside of the shell. And when they make that sound, Mom knows it's time to crack those eggs open, and she will, and she'll let them out, and she will guard them for quite a while. And they've done such a great job that they estimate in Florida, there are now over 1 million alligators living in the wild. Well, you have that box ready? I thought he did a great job. Let's give him a big hand.
ready to bust out of there, Larry.
Too bad, didn't it? Oh my Lord, I need a volunteer. I need someone fairly strong. I need someone fairly intelligent. Oh, we lost a few. We lost one over there for sure. How about, this young man, would you help me? Yeah, come on. Let's give him a nice big hand. How you doing? Oh, I'm free. Oh, we did that wrong. Try it again. I'm still not cool. What's your name? Landon? How do you spell that? Well, that's right. What grade are you in? Oh, in 8th grade. Yeah. Do you know a lot about animals? You like Bigfoot, though, don't you? Oh, yeah. Would you mind telling everybody in one word, in a nice, clear voice, loud and clear voice, what a python is? Do you know what a python is? Snake. Snake. Very good. Let's give him a... Where'd he go? That's a $50 seat you left. You ever held a snake before? Oh, good. We've got someone with experience. You know, people come up to me all the time, and they'll say something like, Larry, I like animals, but I don't like snakes. And I'll ask them why. And to this day, no one has ever given me a really good answer, so I figured it out. We are afraid of things we do not understand. For instance, if you're walking through the woods and you see a snake laying on the ground, remember this. That snake may not see you. He can see the sun. He can see shadows, places to hide. So it is important. But while we have the snake out to keep him from being nervous, because we really do not want him to be nervous, now do we? No. So remember, move slowly. Landon can do that. You know? 2 rules. First rule is we do not want to squeeze the snake, or he might get sort of angry. Second rule is we do not want to drop the snake, or he might get very angry. So I'll tell you what we're going to do. Let's have you move over here just a little bit. Perfect. Okay, put one arm up like this, and the other like tree branches. That's perfect. Okay. Oh! And remember what I said. Slowly. Who'd you come with, Landon? Wave goodbye. All right, let's give him a nice big hand. You doing okay? Yeah. I need to tell you something that right now, I think we have the snake fooled. I think it has the idea it's in a tree. Now, if you should have a problem like breathing, just wave your hand or something, okay? Okay, smile. Now let's pretend we were actually in the rainforest and this snake was really, you doing okay? Okay. He's so polite. And this snake was really, do you realize most of us would probably walk right by it? We would never see it because of the colors it has on its body. That's their camouflage. That's how they hide from their enemies. Now this snake may not be able to see very well, but every time that tongue comes out of its mouth, it's tasting the air. That's how they find water to drink. That's how they find food to eat. And a snake like this, can go for a long time without a meal, maybe as long as a year, but when they do eat, they can swallow something pretty big. Now the python does not have a poisonous bite, which is, hey, pretty good news, huh? Yeah. But you see, inside of her mouth, it is filled with needle-sharp teeth that are like fishing hooks that point. Did you know that already? Just keep smiling. And what's going to happen as the animal approaches the snake, he'll move that head back very slow. He knows he's only going to have one opportunity to catch his prey. He's going to wait, and all of a sudden, so fast and so quick, he's going to strike out. He's going to grab that animal right by the head. Oh, sorry. Sorry, I messed up your hair a little bit. And then with his body, he's going to wrap around and around. Yeah, kind of like that. And he's going to start squeezing. And what actually is going to happen? Every time that animal takes a breath of air, the snake is going to squeeze tighter, 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 and tighter until there's no way that animal can breathe. You understand what I'm saying? Yes, sir? And then his jaws can actually come apart. And they can swallow something 3 to 4 times the size of their head. In fact, imagine this. Once in Africa, they found a python well over 20 feet long, and somehow that snake had managed to swallow whole an animal just about the size. Sorry. And he swallowed the whole thing. Now, you ought to come get some really good pictures.
I'm good.
You know,
I've got Zoom.
here with the zoom. Come here closer.
I'm good, thanks.
Now, Landon, if you wouldn't mind, buddy, I was thinking about putting her back into the box. Let me all. Is there a puddle there now? Is there a wet spot there now? So I was thinking, about putting her back into the box. Can you walk this way? That's good. What do you think it weighs, Landon? A couple 100 pounds? No. Let's give him a big hand. Let's give him a really big hand. Hey, Bruce, can you help me?
No.
See, I put these straps on here because sometimes it crawls out. We'll lose the guy in the front row again. Do the people at the motel? No. That's why they make do not disturb signs. We've forgotten those sometimes, and it's a problem. So, worked for Wild Kingdom for a long time, the old television show with Jim Fowler, Marlon Perkins. Jim's a really good friend of mine. Oh, glad you're back. It was safe to see. Jim's a really good friend of mine. They'd always call Jim for these special events for zoos or nature centers. Bring your animals. Well, he doesn't have any animals, but he knows people all across the country that do have animals we use in educational programs that we could bring. So he was down at Callaway Gardens in Columbus, Georgia, and this was in 1980, 81, So we took some animals down, did a couple programs, and over breakfast one morning he started telling this story how he just gotten back from Russia to do a program for ABC called Spirit of Adventure. And they'd been to Russia to film the Russian brown bears. But he said it just so happened that all the Russian guides wanted to talk about was something they had seen in those mountains, which was very similar to the reports that have come out of Northern California, Oregon, and Washington, Bigfoot. So we were talking about that. So I'd been interested for a long time, but I was kind of in the middle about it. So it was the weirdest thing. I get a call from a producer in Cleveland, Ohio, from a sportsman outdoor show, and they said, we would like to put something together that's really special for our outdoor show that we think would draw a lot of people, plus give us a lot of publicity. So my idea was, let's do a presentation on Bigfoot. They had a pretty good budget, so I was able to spend a little bit. In fact, I actually built an 8-foot Bigfoot model out of dock foam and paper mache. All those signs you see in our display are from that display. We had brought in pine trees and all that stuff. And it was going to be pretty cool. So I wanted to do just a little bit more, so I said, we have money where I could actually, do a little more research. And they said, yeah. So what I did is I called Willow Creek, California, Hodgson's Variety Store. And the reason I called them is I wanted souvenirs on Bigfoot. So they had the Bigfoot mugs, the bumper stickers, the maps, everything they sold. They said they would ship for our outdoor show, as well as lots of brochures to promote Willow Creek. So I asked the fellow, I said, do you know anybody that's actually seen one that I could talk to? And he said, there was 2 guys here a couple years ago. He says, I kept their number. Hold on. The 2 gentlemen he was talking about was John Green and Bob Tippett. And they lived in Harrison Hot Springs, British Columbia. So I made the call, and the first one I talked to was John Green. I was naive, I have to tell you the truth. At that time, we didn't have the internet access. I couldn't punch his name up and find out all the stuff he'd done. So I discovered he was the man. He'd written all the books. He'd been involved with it since the 50s. And we had a really nice discussion. He says, who you need to talk to is Bob Titmus, but his health is not very good. But I'll give you call him up. He's about 3 blocks from me, and see what he says. So I called up Bob Titmus, and I have to admit, the conversation was pretty dry. He didn't really want to say too much. So I used that key. I said, we're doing something educational for children. It opened up the world to him. So he started talking. So then I finally asked him, I said, have you ever seen a Bigfoot? Got real quiet. And he said, Larry, twice. First time was in 1941 off the coast of Alaska in the Wrangell area. He said, I was in the Navy. He says, we were on this big ship going along the edge of the Alaskan coast. He says, it was just about dark. All the sailors were down in the ship playing cards, eating, whatever. He said, I decided I was going to go up on deck and take a look at this beautiful Alaskan scenery. So he walks up there, and he looks along the edge of the shoreline, and he can see something walking along the shoreline. Now I have to explain something about Bob Titmus. He was a hunter, and he was a taxidermist. And in his own words, what I was looking at, I had killed, hunted, or stuffed. He said he couldn't really accurately say how big it was, but he could tell it was huge. Had this round head, the huge shoulders. He says it walked at a very deliberate gait. He says it was reddish brown in color. He says he watched it walk along the shore, then up into the bush, and it was gone just like that. That completely changed his life, because he decided after he was going to get out of the Navy, that's what he was going to look for. He was going to pursue Bigfoot. So the second time was in 1963, outside of Kitimat, British Columbia. Now I have to explain something about Bob. He was a tracker. He was beyond a tracker. He could find the smallest hair on a tree. He was incredible. He could track any animal. So he's tracking these animals, and he's going through this heavy forest, and all of a sudden, he come out in this clearing, and in front of him was about a 1,500-foot rock wall that went straight up. And he said, Larry, he said, I watched 3 of these things as they scaled that rock wall. You've seen the climbers at Yosemite. They put the chalk in their hands, no nets, no ropes. They're nuts. Same thing these things were doing. They'd reach up with those long arms, find a crack, and pull their bodies up. He said it took them about a half hour to climb that wall. An experienced climber would have been all day. Well, I have to tell you something. After I hung up that phone, it all changed. I said, there's something to this. I said, I was going to make a joke out of this display. I was going to make it kind of tongue-in-cheek. Not now. So we go to Cleveland with this beautiful display. John Green flies in from British Columbia. You talk about doing some talking. I talked John Green into coming out of Harrison Hot Springs, British Columbia, one of the most beautiful places in the entire world, to go to Cleveland, Ohio. Took a plane ticket and some money. I'm going to tell you that right now. But what a great guy. He gave me audio interviews he had with Roger Patterson, Albert Ostman, sound stuff that I still treasure. So we're in Cleveland. We're doing this display, and it's pretty cool. We got John Green. We got pine trees. We got my fake Bigfoot model. We got all this information, and people are just loving it. And all day we talked about Bigfoot. That night, I was so sick of Bigfoot. I didn't want to utter another darn word about it. So I get a call to my hotel room. And the guy, I pick up the phone, he goes, you're the guy that was on TV today on Bigfoot. I go, yeah. He goes, I live in northeastern Ohio. Okay, well here's the thing, man. I'm ready to go to bed. I just had dinner. He said, I'll leave a couple tickets for you and come on to the sports show and we'll talk tomorrow. So, oh, I'm not coming there. It's 100 miles and I just don't have the time. No interest whatsoever. Oh, he said, I just wanted to tell you, I've been at war with Bigfoot. What? So then I decided I want to talk to him. So I talked to him for about an hour and a half. And he said, you need to come by. I said, I do. He lived in Conneaut, Ohio. I said, here's the thing. I said, I'm going to be coming by in 2 weeks. Going to Syracuse, New York. I'll be about 10 o'clock at night. I'll have a truckload of animals with me. He said, well, if I can stop. He said, come on. So I stopped, and he had this huge journal, hundreds of pages long. Everything that had happened to him had been documented. And his wife, I said to his wife, I said, I would love to have the time to read this journal. She says, well, if you give me 2 or 3 weeks, I'll type it out and send it to you. 3 weeks, I had that in the mail, and here's what happened quickly. He bought this property in the middle of nowhere. He wanted to build this house. They get so far on the framework of this house, and something during the night would come in and tear it all out. So they're either thinking it's either bears, which why would bears do that, or just vandals. So after about the 3rd go around of this, they decided to put a security guard on it. So they finally got the house built. They got moved in. Well, my friend was a welder. He worked in a machine shop. One of the guys he worked with said, hey, he says, I'm having a little trouble with the wife. And I have a trailer. Could I park it behind your place there, about 100 yards behind your house? He thought about it. He said, well, yeah, I guess for a little while. We'll try it. So he had the guy living back there, you know, it was a euphoria for him. He was a hunter, he was a fisherman. What a great place to live, right on the Pennsylvania border. They had everything, bears, deer, salmon fishing. It was fantastic. So one night, his new neighbor worked the second shift and get home about midnight. So he's coming home, he pulls in the driveway, comes bailing out of his car, and he says, something run across the road in front of me. He says, I don't think it was a bear, but it was walking up on two legs, and it run across the road into them woods. So my friend is thinking to himself, I've made a dreadful mistake. He's either an alcoholic or a drug addict. He's seeing stuff. So he goes back to the trailer. So my friend was welding. Sitting there in the garage, he's sitting there, he's got him a cigarette going, he's looking out, it's nice night. Then he can hear something. Hear something walking through the woods. Shoo, 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 shoo. He hears it walk clear behind his house, side of his yard, behind his house, and onto an area called Jumbo Woods. So he just went to bed. He didn't really think any more about it. And then, about 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning, the window by their bedroom, something walked up to that window and started screaming so loud, the glass literally rattled. They bailed out of that bed. He hopped up out the wife. She said, what in the world is that? He grabbed a gun out of his dresser. He goes outside and he hears this thing screaming, here it walking through the woods. So he aims it kind of in the direction, boom! Shoots it. He thinks, well, it just shuts up. But he can still hear it walking through the woods. So he goes back in the house and the wife says, what do you think that was? I think it was a bobcat. It was a bobcat or something, hon. You all right, go back to bed, it'll be all right. So he's laying there in bed and he's thinking to himself, there wasn't no bobcat. Next day, same time, same place, right by that window, comes up again, starts screaming so loud that glass is rattling, he flies out of bed. The wife flies out of bed, she's grabbing clothes and putting them in a suitcase. She's going to the Holiday Inn. She's out of there. Goes outside, does the same thing, shoots in its direction, shuts up, but it keeps walking. So he doesn't even go to work that day, and he's thinking, what in the world have we got here? So he makes two big mistakes. He called the television, and he called the newspaper. His neighbors learned to hate him. He'd find stuff. He'd have an apple tree completely full of apples. One day, the next day he'd go out, they'd be gone. There would be none left on the ground at all. He found a fawn that had been ripped in half. The front half left in the yard one night, and the back half the next night. So this news gets out, and this guy calls him from Saskatchewan. The guy calls up, he says, I understand you have Bigfoot. I hunt the Sasquatch. Yeah. Well, come on down here to Ohio. I got one you can hunt. Well, this guy shows up, you know, he's about 6'6", kind of furry, kind of like me, I guess. Had a big old Bowie knife on his side. He walks out there, so my friend's telling me, what you need to do, go straight out my backyard. That's Jumbo Woods. That's where it's at. Just head right that direction, right there. There he goes in his camouflage and his Bowie knife and his big hat. First step he takes over the cattle fence, thing's standing right there. Starts screaming in his face. He literally walked on his knees and hands back to the house. He was crawling back to the house. Sat there, he couldn't even hold a cup of coffee for an hour. The next morning he had a plane booked back to Saskatchewan. And he told the guy, he says, you got big problems. You got a Sasquatch. He goes, really? So it went a long time, and he really didn't get a chance to get a good look at him. till one night, he's sitting on his porch, having a little liquid refreshment, and right in the middle of his yard, he had this nightlight, clear at the back part of the yard. Kind of lit it up just a little bit. And he's sitting there, and he's looking in the dark, and he can see something in the dark, kinda. You know how the darkness just kind of moves around, but he can't make out nothing. So he just keeps looking and looking. Finally, it walks out perfectly underneath that nightlight. So the light cascaded over its head and its shoulders and its arms, and you could perfectly see the. Now, you could not make any details out as far as the face, but you could see the shape of it. And as it stood there, it just rocked back and forth and breathed real loud. He looked at it, and he's thinking, it's the light. He says, they won't walk into the light. So after that thing took a step back and went back into the woods, he said, I need to put up more lights. He lit his yard up like Shea Stadium. That pretty much eliminated that problem. He still has sightings today. I still talk to him frequently. There were so many things. He would talk about seeing it in the Conneaut River one day. It was so foggy and wet, and they'd had so much rain, the river was just torrential. And he watched it walk into the current as if it was walking on dry land. So the strength and power of this thing, he said, Larry, he says, you don't understand. I don't want to study it. I don't want to see it no more. I want it to leave. Well, a fella comes up to him one day and he said, you know, what you're doing, nobody's going to believe your story. Nobody's going to listen to what you have to say. So you might as well just shut up about it. And he asked the guy, he says, you ever seen it? He says, yeah. He says, I've seen it. He said, it's been here as long as I've been here. It was as long as my dad was here. His dad was here. It's been here. And this fellow worked at a stockyard. So he could look at a head of beef and he could tell within 30 or 40 pounds how much that weighed. And he asked me, he said, how much do you think it weighed? He said, well, it weighed about 1,500 pounds. That's a big animal. And Doug used to tell me, he said, when that big one would come around, he said, I would not go into the woods because everything had a different feel about it. You know, getting back to the Patterson film, Bob Titmus basically told Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin where they needed to look. In fact, when they shot that film, he was in the University of British Columbia when they showed it for the first time. And when they showed it, and he's looking at the screen, it's filled with scientists in this room. And he's looking at that screen, and he's thinking to himself, that is the same thing I saw off the coast of Alaska. That is the same thing I saw in the Wrangell Narrows in Alaska. It's done. There's the proof. It's over. Over. When he watched all those scientists leave the room and say it's a hoax, he couldn't believe it. So we had to get down to, we said we need to gather more evidence. So he goes to Bluff Creek, California. This is exactly what he told me. He started looking for the tracks. Now anyone who knows history of the film knows that that night it rained. And Bob Gimlin went out in the dark and covered those tracks with bark and whatever he could find. So it took Bob Titmus a little while to find the tracks. So finally figured out what they'd done. They covered them up with bark and so forth. So I told you he was an expert tracker. So he follows these tracks, and he's going through the woods, and he follows them up this mountain. And he said at the top of this mountain, well, not a mountain, I should say a hill, there was these pebbles about this size, about the size of golf balls, covered with green algae, because it's a rainforest. And he said, you could see where this thing had set its heels in and set its buttocks in. And he said, from that vantage point, it had a perfect view of the valley below. In other words, it was sitting there watching them make their foot cast or whatever they were doing, and he was watching them do this. Now, Bob Titmus, when he saw those tracks for the first time, he looked at them and he said, I know this animal. And the reason he knew it, he was in the same area about 2-3 years before that. He got back in the rainforest. He got so busy tracking, he lost track of time. And the sun went down, and you have to understand something. When it gets dark in the rainforest, don't move. Because if you go walking around, they won't find you. There's people that have been lost forever. So he realized what he'd done. He'd screwed up. So he was going to have to stay there all night. So with his hands, he dug a pit in the ground so he could land. So he's laying in this pit, and he covered himself up with branches. The only thing exposed to the elements was his face. And he's laying in this pit, and it's about 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning or so, and he can hear something coming through the woods. Choo, 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 choo. So his first thought, it's elk. Elk's hooves are like razor blades. If they trample me in here, I'm dead. So he kept listening, because I said, I'll have to spook him or something. So he's listening, and he realizes it's too late. It's not elk. And he hears it coming, closer and closer. Then it stopped. One of the things that have not been discussed here today was their incredible sense of smell. He said he could hear it, smell in the air. And it was basically, it could smell him, but it couldn't figure out where he was. So it started walking back and forth through the woods. It started screaming, breaking branches, throwing rocks. This went on basically all night. As soon as the sun started to come up, it left. Bob, well, needless to say, he got no sleep that night. He gets out of that pit, and he starts looking around, and he said, Larry, he said, where this thing had walked back and forth all night long, looked like a road grader had gone down through there. He says every small tree was broken, medium-sized trees were basically pushed over. You could see where the rocks had been thrown. And when he looked at the Patterson film, or the film side I should say, and he looked at those tracks, he said to himself, that is the same track that I saw here about 3 years ago when I was in that pit all night. This thing was going back and forth through the woods. Same track. I've been involved with this for a long, long time. And John Green told me some very interesting, well, kind of an analogy. The longer you study it, the more questions you will have. I talk to people all the time. I don't think a lot of people have the concept of how intelligent and how sophisticated these animals are. 99% of the time, someone that has a sighting, you weren't looking for it. It was a complete surprise. They said, why don't we have a good picture? There are so many animals on this planet, we do not have good pictures. So to say we don't have a good picture of one of these, because like I heard earlier, the average sighting, 7, 8 seconds. Well, I'm going to tell you, when it runs across the road in front of your car, it's a lot quicker than that. You don't have to, and your first response is, what is that? And by the time you say, what is that? And your mind's just going back and forth, your next thought isn't grab a camera. It's the last thing on your mind. Even Roger Patterson, man, when they were filming that film, he was running. He's got, you know, that camera going up and down and that round. My father had one of them cameras. We had old vacations that looked like that. So it's. And I also tell some of the young researchers that are getting into it, I said, if you go into the field, don't wear camouflage. You're marking yourself. Because these things obviously do not like hunters. Hunters have guns. Hunters have shot at these things before. Wear the most colorful Hawaiian shirt you've got. Wear you a pair of beach shorts and some thongs and act like you're having a party. And you've got a lot more chance of
of encountering a Bigfoot, and if you're walking through there with your camouflage and you got your knife hanging down here and you're going back to the woods and you got your knife here, they can see all that stuff. It's worthless. I talked to Bill Grant Guinness a while back. They can smell the cameras on the trees. Besides see them. You know, even wolves find them. Bears find them. So something 10 times as intelligent? I mean, hands down. And when I hear somebody, when I'm giving a talk like this one, and they'll come up to me and they'll say, you know, if I saw Bigfoot, I'll track it down. I said, that's real easy to say in this well-lit library. Put your hind end out in that woods with all the other Mother Nature's creatures, and something you just saw was 8 foot long and looked at you like you were a piece of nothing. Basically, when you see one of these things, I'm told, it's like when you see the mountains for the first time, you realize you're a little speck of nothing. These things are far sufficient. When you walk into the forest compared to these things, you are a moron. We cannot compete. These things live off the land. They live in the woods. It's kind of like Naked and Afraid for real. So, and when the youngsters say they're interested in Bigfoot, go for it. Because if there's anything that'll get them out in the woods, get them from in front of them computers and them Game Boys and all that other stuff, and get them back into Mother Nature, get dirty, wet, get poison ivy, get scratched up, I'm all for it. I think Billy Willard did a fine job on this conference. One party's messed up, he had me laughing. And I'll tell you what, we've enjoyed Virginia a lot. What a beautiful country. And we're driving through Virginia. My good friend David Herring, he Carter is over. We had all those gators and snakes shoved in a Honda. Oh. But I tell you what, it was cozy. Every time we stop, you hear the alligator. It was in the room. It was in the room one night. It was messing around. It's great. David says, that alligator's getting out. I had to go back to bed. You did a fine job. Thanks to the young man for helping me today. You were fantastic. And Bruce, get a life. Thanks, everybody.